I was the one who signed off on the depth log the morning the vein shaft passed 9,000 meters. So I am the one who has to explain why the number after that is wrong in 3 different files. Hollow Vein Station sits on the coldest shelf of our home continent, where the crust runs thin enough that the survey boards have wanted a hole drilled through it for 200 years. Mineral assay mostly. A little prestige. Nobody expected 9,000 meters to mean anything except a deeper number than the last teams. I had drilled deep wells before. I knew what rock sounded like when it gave, and what it sounded like when it didn't want to. At 9,412 meters, the bit stopped sounding like rock. The core sample that came up wasn't core. It was lattice, gray, fused, deliberate, with seams too regular for anything geology does on its own. My senior tech, Oris Vell, turned it under the lamp for a long minute and said the word casing before either of us wanted to say it out loud. We had drilled into something built, not a fossil, a container. We logged it, sealed the bore head, and called the regional survey office, because that is the correct order of operations when you find a wall at the bottom of the world. What we did not know, what nobody on this planet had known for longer than anyone alive could measure, was that the casing wasn't only a wall, it was wired. The breach came 4 hours later, not an explosion, a pressure equalization, slow and almost polite, like the planet exhaling something it had been holding since before our written history started. The shaft gauges didn't spike, they sagged, every pressure reading on the board dropping at once, as though something below us had opened its hand. 3 of my crew were on the platform when the shaft vented. I won't list what came up the bore with that air, because some of it I still don't have words for, and some of it I don't want to give words to. I will say that 2 of the 3 made it to the lift cage, and that the second one through the doors had to be carried. I will say that the third is the reason this report has a casualty line at all, and that I have read his shift card forward and back trying to find a decision he could have made differently, and I have not found one. The platform crew sealed the lower deck on instinct before anyone gave the order, which is the only reason I'm writing this report instead of someone reading mine into a memorial record. The bore head held. The shaft did not. What I want to be honest about, because the inquiry board will want honesty more than comfort, is that the moment the casing fractured, something inside it woke up and started transmitting. Not a weapon, not the thing itself. A beacon, buried with it, doing exactly what it had been built to do, tell anyone, that the seal had failed. The frequency was old, pre-accord old. Our communications officer, Stendar, ran it through every registry we had and got nothing. Not a match, not a fragment, not even an archived, unsupported flag. It was as if the channel had never existed in any system we still used. He almost gave up on it. Then, 11 minutes after the breach, the channel answered. Not our regional office, not the Planetary Defense Net. Something else, on the same dead frequency, speaking in a cadence so flat and procedural it took Sten a full minute to realize it wasn't an echo of our own transmission. It identified itself, in 3 short bursts, as a deep monitoring relay belonging to Earth. I had heard of Earth the way you hear of a neighboring district you've never had reason to visit. A signatory, generations back, to a joint quarantine accord none of us had read past the summary page. I did not know, until that hour, that any part of that accord was still active. I certainly did not know that one clause in it had quietly tied our planet's oldest, deadest emergency frequency to a listening post on the other side of the dark, and that the listening post had never been told to stop listening. Earth did not send ships. I want to be plain about that, because every story I'd ever heard about a misdirected SOS ended with something arriving, a fleet, a frigate, a single armed vessel dropping out of the dark to stand over the wreckage. Nothing dropped out of the dark over Hollow Vein Station. There was no orbit to drop into. We were 9.5 kilometers under solid crust. A warship is a magnificent answer to almost every kind of trouble, and it is no answer at all to ours. What came down the channel instead, 40 minutes after first contact, was a data packet. 11,000 pages of containment protocol, isotopic stabilizer schematics, and a structural diagram of a casing identical to ours down to the seam spacing, pulled, the header said, from an archive classification Earth still called Joint Quarantine Accord, pre-diaspora series. Sten read me the timestamp on the original document twice before I believed it. It was older than our written language. He kept asking me, half to himself, whether a relay could even hold a frequency open that long without anyone touching it, and I didn't have an answer that satisfied either of us. We checked the packet for corruption the way you check a stranger's offered hand before you take it. It came back clean. Every diagram matched our instruments, field for field, as if whoever built our casing and whoever built theirs had once stood in the same room reading the same specification sheet. We did not ask for it. That is the part I keep turning over. We did not even know to ask, because we did not know the beacon had ever been meant to reach anyone capable of answering. The accord that built it, the authority it had been calling for across 40,000 years of silence, did not exist anymore. Whatever government had once promised to come if that casing ever cracked was gone, dissolved, forgotten, erased from every registry we still kept current. The beacon had been calling into an empty room for longer than our species had kept calendars. Earth was never in that room. Earth was 3 rooms down, with the door propped open out of nothing but old paperwork nobody had bothered to close, and it heard the knock anyway. I read the stabilizer schematics myself twice, while the engineering crew prepped the borehead for a second seal attempt. The geometry matched our casing almost exactly, the same lattice spacing, the same isotope signature in the fused rock, near enough that Oris said it was either an extraordinary coincidence or the original builders had cut more than one of these casings and scattered them wide. I don't think it was coincidence. I think whatever we share with whoever built that thing is older than either of our histories admits to. We resealed the breach at hour 19, using a stabilizer compound we would never have synthesized in time on our own. The casualty count stopped at 1. I have read the schematics enough times now to know that without them it would not have stopped there. Sten kept the channel open for another 6 hours after the seal held, mostly out of a stubbornness I have come to respect in him. Near the end of it, a single line came through, unscheduled, signed only with a station designator we didn't recognize. Acknowledgement received, breach contained, frequency will remain monitored. Nothing else. No request for thanks, no demand for explanation, no follow-up fleet inbound to inspect the wreckage. Just a closed loop, quietly maintained on a channel that, as far as either of our worlds was officially concerned, hadn't existed an hour earlier. I am writing this incident report the way the inquiry board will want it written: depth figures, casualty figure, timeline, corrective action, and I am leaving one line in that I expect someone above me to ask me to remove. I am recommending that the old frequency stay open, not because I think anything good will come down it twice. Because 40,000 years ago, something on this planet built a machine whose entire purpose was to call for help into a silence it expected to last forever, and the silence did not hold. Somebody was still listening. It wasn't who the beacon was built for. It answered anyway. I did not aim that signal at Earth. Nobody alive did. The casing that cracked under my drill bit was sealed by people who never knew Earth existed, calling out to an authority that died before either of our histories began. None of that mattered to the relay on the other end. It heard a frequency it was responsible for, and it answered exactly as if the call had been meant for it all along. We are leaving the channel monitored. Sten checks it every shift change now, out of habit more than expectation. Nothing has come through since the acknowledgement. I don't think anything needs to. The hole is sealed. The casualty line has one name on it instead of more, and somewhere on the other side of all that dark, a station I will never see kept a 40,000-year-old promise that was never made to them in the first place. That is the part of this report I cannot find a clean way to file.